Hello, I'm Brandie Yates, and in just a moment we'll have an in-depth special interview with Nassar survivor Brianne Randall-Gay. But before we talk to her, let's take a look at her story.
I am here to tell you my story as a survivor of childhood sexual abuse. It was the fall of 2004. I was 17 years old and in my senior year of high school. I had been struggling with chronic back pain. My doctor referred me to a specialist who was supposed to be the best of the best. His name was Larry Nassar, and I was told to be lucky to be seeing him. After all, he was the doctor of the USA gymnastics team. My parents were unable to attend the appointment, so I went alone. At this appointment, Larry asked me to undress so he could massage my back. He gave me a pair of shorts and had me lay on my stomach. He started pushing really hard on my back and then placed his ungloved fingers on my vagina. He then placed the other hand on my breast and began massaging. I remember being in shock. He asked if it hurt. It did, but I was too scared to say anything, afraid of what he might do. I responded no. After the treatment was complete, he had me get dressed in front of him and went on to schedule weekly visits. I walked out of the office in a daze. Later that day, I told my mom what had happened. She took me into the police station to file a complaint. At the station, there were 2 male officers who took my statement. While they were both very nice, I remember feeling embarrassed telling them the intimate details of the abuse I had just endured. They took me to the hospital where I had a sexual assault kit done. The procedure was unlike anything I had experienced before. It was invasive and uncomfortable. I remember saying to the nurse I was afraid everyone would think I was lying. She assured me that this would not be the case. I don't remember anyone asking me how I was feeling or if I needed counseling services. I felt so alone. It was a couple of weeks before we received a phone call from the police. We were asked to come in so that Larry could explain this procedure and how this was just a misunderstanding. I did not attend the meeting because I was afraid to face the man who had just abused me. Larry Nassar explained to my parents that he is used to working with gymnasts, and because I was not a gymnast, I was not as comfortable with my body and therefore misunderstood the procedure he was doing. We were informed that the case would be closed and no charges would be filed. I remember my parents coming home and informing me of the officer's findings. I still questioned what had happened. I went online and tried to research this type of treatment, but came up with nothing. I decided to let this go because there was a lot going on with my family and I did not want to be a distraction. My dad had been diagnosed with stomach cancer and was told he only had a few months to live. I felt like it would be selfish of me to ask my parents to pursue this in light of my dad's illness. My dad ended up passing away the following spring, a few weeks before I graduated high school. I tried to go on with my life, attended college, and pursued my career as a physician assistant. As I continued my education, I questioned what happened to me more and more. I realized how Larry Nassar had gone against so many standard protocols for medical professionals. I tried to revisit pressing charges, but discovered that the statute of limitations had run out. I tried to convince myself that this was an isolated incident and I would just have to get over it. In September 2016, I got a message from a high school friend who had sent me the link to an IndyStar article that discussed new allegations against Larry Nassar. I read the allegations and realized that this woman's story was exactly the same as mine. I immediately broke down. My worst fear had just become a reality. I would later learn that this was not an isolated incident, not even close. Over the course of 2 decades, Larry Nassar abused over 250 girls and young women under the guise of medical treatment. I felt an extreme sense of guilt for not stopping him years ago. I spent the next 6 months unable to function like I did before. I would go to work, put a smile on my face, and pretend like everything was fine, but I was screaming on the inside. I would go home and cry for hours on end. I felt like this pain was never going to go away. Slowly, with the help of therapy and support of my family, I was able to find myself again, and the healing began. Shortly after, I found out I was pregnant. My husband and I were thrilled about this new adventure. I felt like I had finally gotten to a place that I could let go of the past. My son was born December 3rd, 2017. Unfortunately, shortly after his birth was the sentencing of Larry Nassar, and I was offered to read a victim impact statement. I was so scared to leave my newborn son, but I knew that I had to do this in order to fully heal. I made a last-minute decision to travel across the country to confront the man who abused me over 13 years ago. I was terrified to speak in front of all those people and didn't even know where to start when trying to convey the profound effect this abuse had on my life. Confronting Larry Nassar was both terrifying and empowering. It is a moment I will never forget. While I'm eternally grateful that I was able to speak my truth and confront my abuser, it brought up so many emotions that I had tried to hide away. After sentencing, I began having nightmares. I would dream that I was being abused by Larry and was screaming for help, but no one was listening. The abuse by Larry Nassar completely changed the trajectory of my life. While I have a wonderful family, a fulfilling career, I still suffer severe anxiety and nightmares related to the abuse. I think what was hardest for me was the fact that I did what I was supposed to do by reporting his abuse, but I felt like no one heard me or wanted to hear me. At a young age, I received the message that my voice didn't matter, especially when it was up against a powerful man. I have since learned that I am strong and my voice does matter. I hope all of you will hear these words today and take this into account when a victim comes in reporting sexual abuse. It is imperative that we listen to victims and take all accounts seriously, regardless of the accused. After 13 long years, myself and hundreds of other survivors received justice. I realize that most victims do not get the opportunity to seek justice. They are afraid to speak out, fearing that they won't be believed or have fear of retaliation. I hope we can promote an environment where victims feel empowered to speak out and that authority figures have the tools to respond appropriately and give victims the support they need. Today, myself and over 200 of my sister survivors stand together to bring awareness to childhood sexual abuse and promote a culture that no longer enables predators, but empowers survivors.
And as we just saw in that video, Brianne Randall-Gay has worked with Meridian Township, and that is a training video being shown to Meridian Township Police as a part of the criminal sexual conduct initiatives the township is doing this year. And joining me now in studio is Brianne. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
So you are here for the first committee meeting of the criminal sexual assault prevention program Meridian Township is putting into place. How does it feel being back in Meridian Township?
It's great to be back. I grew up in Hazlitt my entire life, so it's really nice to be back home. I really still feel like this is home for me. It is a bit triggering to come back. Just walking through the doors of the township brings me back, 13 years ago to when I made my report. So it's been difficult, but I look forward to the changes that we're making.
Okay, and tell me a little bit about that powerful, courageous video that you've provided for training for not only the police department, but we're hoping for community-wide.
Yeah, so it was great to be able to tell my story and to use that story in a way to train officers on how to better respond to victims of sexual abuse, to hopefully change it for the next person so that their story is heard, they're believed, and they don't have to, go through the process of having to wait 13 years to seek justice.
And so you mentioned in the video the healing process and how you thought that in order to heal fully, which I don't know if anyone can actually ever heal fully from a situation like that, but being able to confront Larry Nassar and being able to tell your story fully, has that kind of helped a little bit moving forward?
I kind of always thought it would help, and I think it's helped in some ways to bring some closure to it, but at the same time, it brought up a lot of the past that I had kind of hid away. Right after the sentencing was really a difficult time for me, and as we discussed, I had a newborn at the time, so I was trying to kind of navigate being a new mom as well as dealing with this trauma from the past.
And that's just a lot of emotions in general, being a new mother. As myself, we were just discussing just those kind of emotions. And I could not imagine the struggle that you've gone through so far, but sometimes when stuff personal happens, people use it to to help educate and empower others, and that's what you're doing, being a kind of consulting with Meridian Township,
Right.
telling your story. So today was the first committee meeting of the program, of the sexual assault prevention program in Meridian Township. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I think we were able to have really great discussions. I've been working very hard the past couple of months to do research and come up with some initiatives that I think would be beneficial for the community. And we were able to get the input from all the committee members to really determine what aspects of education work for our community to prevent this tragedy from happening again.
Mm-hmm. And can you maybe kind of give us a little insight on what some of the ideas that you've brought to the table?
Yeah, so we did talk about curriculum for school-age children. However, we recognize that this is a broader issue and that we need to work with legislators first in order to provide the funding for these. So that's something that we discussed. We also discussed making an educational pamphlet for the community, for adults, on how to recognize signs of abuse and respond appropriately, and also give them resources for victims, or if they want to report abuse. Another thing that we discussed is just some projects within the school that we can work on in terms of posters and identifying areas that maybe are not as safe as others, and trying to make the school a safe environment for all students. The last thing that we are going to be working on is education for adults on how to recognize the signs of abuse. So we're looking at different programs like Stewards of Children, and how we can offer that program to all adults in the community.
Yeah, and speaking, so you focused a lot about education of schools and children, and those signs for parents is obviously crucial, because some children may not even understand what quite happened to them, or how to approach an adult, or even if they do, the proper steps that should be taken. What kind of things do you want to tell parents of the community, that some of the signs that you've researched and obviously probably went through yourself, what are some of those signs you'd like to tell people?
You know, if kids are withdrawing, if their grades are falling, they have little interest in doing things, then those could be signs that something's going on and that we need to talk to our kids. So recognizing that and being able to have those conversations and being proactive about it can be really beneficial. So I'm hoping that these training materials for adults and parents in particular will give them that information and those resources to be able to have these very important conversations.
Okay, and we talked about the video for the police department specifically as a part of that training. What kind of things do you hope that police officers will take from that video?
I hope that the officers will take all accounts and all reports of sexual abuse seriously, regardless of the accused. So in my case, Larry Nassar was a very prominent doctor, so he was believed over me, and I feel as though the investigation was not very thorough because of that. So I really want them to look at that and say, regardless of who's coming in, who's reporting the abuse, we need to take the account seriously and do our due diligence.
Right, and sometimes the culture that we live in, victims are not believed, or they're blamed in some cases. What kind of movement do you think needs to happen to kind of change the culture and society's views on victims of sexual assault?
We need to make sure that all children know that they have rights to their body, and when those rights are being violated, that they can speak up and they will be believed.
Okay, and so, I mean, you're coming back to your hometown. You grew up here. Talk about your partnership with Meridian Township as a whole. I mean, I believe they're taking some steps in the right direction that maybe some communities haven't taken quite yet. Talk about your partnership.
It's been really great to work with them. Frank Walsh, Chief Hall, and the rest of the township have been incredibly supportive. So having their support in this difficult time has been really beneficial for my healing process. And I hope that other communities will look at the initiatives that they're doing and realize that this is not something that is just happening in Meridian Township, but it's happening globally. So we all need to make these steps to make sure that we better protect our children.
Okay, and being a new mother yourself, and for me, this kind of hit home to me, even though I've never experienced this, but being a survivor of sexual assault and being a new mother, I mean, there's got to even be more emotions happening and making strides to help make a safer place for children. Can you just maybe add a little something about that?
Yeah, I mean, the moment I had my son, I began having all these worries about, you know, something like this happening to him, and all I want to do is protect him. That's my job as a mom, is to protect him. So even finding a daycare for him was really difficult because I was worried about, you know, potential abuse. So all of these things come into my mind. So I really want to promote a culture that, you know, protects children, empowers survivors, and doesn't enable predators.
Well, Brianne, is there anything else you'd like to say? I'm sure we'll talk to you again once initiatives are continuing after this first visit for the committee meeting. Is there anything else you'd like to say?
I just want to thank the community for their support, in particular Meridian Township for their support, and I look forward to what we can do for the community moving forward.
Well, thank you so much, Brianne.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching.